On that major police operation announced for tomorrow in southwest Sydney, do you think it's justified or is that too heavy-handed?
I think that it's fairly heavy-handed. I mean, I understand that there may be missing messaging, but I think what we've learned from northern Melbourne lockdown was the community felt that they hadn't been given warning, that there weren't enough people within their own community helping to lead the way. And I think police often are seen by our migrant community as being a group that have a lot of power, and they've had a lot of anxiety with them back in their own country before they became Australian citizens or residents. So I think it could be better done with using their own community, going out and being liaison persons, wearing a sash, going out, handing out information, talking to people, and asking them to wear masks, putting flyers under doorways, because I think that the police are important, that you don't want them to be perceived as aggressive.
Are the public health orders strong enough to eliminate transmission by the end of next week, if followed by the entire community?
First of all, the messaging has to be very, very plain. This is Delta. When you leave your home, wear a mask, except for if you're jogging. And if you're jogging, jog away from people. And it's as simple as that. If you're walking the dog or working, going to the up the street to go shopping, that is not exercise. It's nice to get out, but you need to wear your mask. So it needs to be very simple. And don't be inside in the shopping mall for too long. So very simple. But even if we get that right, we're still going to have a lag time because we haven't yet reached the peak. Now, if we get about 20 odd cases tomorrow and then consistently, then we might have reached the peak. But in a week's time, we will start seeing, of course, numbers going down, but we won't be anywhere near out of the problem area, because normally it takes about 2 weeks after a peak for you to get to zero cases, particularly zero, that have not been in isolation. And they're the numbers that you really are worried about. Not the ones in isolation, but the ones that have been out in the community. And they've been big numbers. They've gone from 10% to 50% often of daily cases. And that means over the last week or so, we've had at least, 50 people out in the community. So we'll have another week to have to see what that experience has led to, secondary cases. So even if we had really savage lockdowns, we're still going to see cases.
So on that savage lockdown question, clearly the state government in New South Wales is resistant to introducing tougher and stricter measures. The Prime Minister himself commended the New South Wales Premier for resisting a full lockdown a couple of weeks ago. But are there other measures short of a full lockdown? You have actually just mentioned better messaging, masks outside, that would make a noticeable difference in the next week or two.
Well, what the UK have done, and the UK has experienced Delta like no other country really has. I mean, they went from Alpha, that was very infectious, about 30% more infectious, to Delta, and that happened in half the time that Alpha took over. And what they've done is they have collection points where you can get take-home tests and take them home, and of course, put your results online so that people know if they're infectious, because you are infectious before you start getting symptoms. And you can pick these things up in libraries or other collection points. And it's the knowledge that people need sometimes to see that they're infectious. But if we can't do that, and we certainly can't do that now and roll it out fast, assume you're infectious and act accordingly. But really, the time for the lockdown should have happened when we had about 6 cases before a weekend, because people leave, they socialise, they do parties, as we've seen, they go to the hairdressers. That was the time to lock down, to put a stop to people moving. And right now, we still have people moving. And I'd ask people, if they're at their holiday home, stay there. Do not move. Stay where you find yourself.
Now, the Prime Minister has announced another 300 vaccine doses for New South Wales in light of the severity of this outbreak. He's also encouraged people in the lockdown area who've had one jab of the AstraZeneca vaccine already to try to move their second jab forward closer to an 8-week interval between doses. How helpful do you think those measures will be in containing this outbreak or future outbreaks here in this area?
Well, certainly the English experience shows that people with 2 doses were much less risk than people with 1 dose. And 1 dose may stop you from dying, may reduce your risk of hospitalisation, but may not, of course, protect you at all from symptomatic or asymptomatic infection. So the idea of moving your second dose forward will be a good idea, but we may have to have a booster shot after that, because if you start moving it away from that 12 weeks, then your antibody response may not be as good as it could be. But given that we're in dire straits at the moment with Delta, we don't want it to go across any state borders. We don't want it to go into the elderly. It's a good idea.